What is up, football fans, UFL fans, but most importantly, Houston Roughnecks fans? Welcome to episode 29.2. That's right, second episode of the week of Roughnecks Rundown. I'm wearing my button-up shirt today. Why is that? Because I wanted to clean up my act. I needed to clean it up a little, look a little more disciplined, because that's what the Roughnecks have to do this week. 22 penalties last week, not getting it done. We got to clean up our act. Shoot, I'd love it if everybody showed up to this game in a suit. I'd love it. But let's talk about how we can win this week against the DC Defenders. Let's get into it.
I'm in the big leagues. Told her don't miss me. Ballin' like Houston. Ayy, feeling like Whitney. I need a bag, bruh. Send it through quickly.
All right. Like I said, episode 29.2, second one of the week. If you missed the recap of the loss to the Showboats, I went over the good, I went over the bad, and I went over our quarterback. I went over it all. That episode dropped earlier this week. You can go check that out on the YouTube. Go watch as much Roughnecks Rundown as you want. This episode is going to be about the upcoming game. It's going to be about playing the DC Defenders in week 2. Now, here's the topics for this episode. Number 1, I'm going to go over our opponent. I'm going to go into who they are. Then I'm going to go into their strengths. Then their weaknesses. I'm going to talk about how we can win this game. And then I'm going to talk about the keys to winning. The 4 things that I think we have to do in order to win this game, right? So let's get into it. Number 1, our opponent. We're playing the DC Defenders. Most people thought that they were going to be 1-0 this week. Most people thought that they were going to have just steamrolled the San Antonio Brahmas. They did not do that. They came out, they are 0-1, just like us. They are a lot. Some people are ranking them last. Some people are ranking us last. It's a toss-up. You know, you can't lose either way. You're right. Like, these are the worst 2 teams from week 1. They lost to the San Antonio Brahmas in a spectacular fashion. Literally had a punter scoring touchdowns on them. So this is who we're playing this week. Jordan Ta'amu and crew, Reggie Barlow, Greg Williams. I think we can win this game. Now, let's talk about their strengths. Let's start with what they're good at. What they're good at is that Jordan Ta'amu, he's legit. Jordan Ta'amu is a legitimate quarterback. He can pass the ball. He's great at RPOs. He's great with his legs. He's a great improvisational quarterback. He's not necessarily the guy that you always want in the pocket throwing the ball, but he's good at throwing on the run. He's good at improvising plays and making things happen with his legs. And in spring football, that's what you want. That's really the kind of quarterback that you're looking for. That's the archetype that guys are trying to find. That's probably a big reason why Jarrett Garantano won our starting quarterback position, is because he fits that same kind of archetype. Then their second biggest strength, and I'm not saying they only have 4 strengths. That's not what I'm saying. But these are the 4 main ones that you need to know going into the game. Number 2 is their edge rushers. They have Davin Bellamy, former defensive all XFL player. He was an all USFL player season 1 for the New Orleans Breakers. Then he was an all XFL player season 2 for the DC Defenders. They have great edge rushers. Their defensive line is legit. And we have to pay attention to that, especially because our offensive line was actually the worst in week 1. So we have to be cognizant of that, because they're edge rushers and they're guys up the middle. You know, they have TJ Barnes. They have big names, man. If you're not talking about the Roughnecks, then they're probably the second best defensive line. Then their third strength is their blitzing. This is going to come up again real quick, but they do blitz well. They blitz better than anybody else in the league. That's what Greg Williams is known for. He has a lot of very creative blitzes. He's very good at getting to the quarterback. Then the last thing is their corners. They have fantastic corners. They have guys who have started 70-something games in the NFL. They have a dude who is a former first-round draft pick in the NFL. Their corners are very good. Now, their safeties got ate up a little bit in week 1. They didn't look as good as everybody thinks, but that also had to do with the fact that they were left on an island a lot of times. But the corners, they do play well. They also gave up a little bit last game, but it wasn't on them. We'll get into what that was. Let's talk about it. It's the weaknesses. Number 1, their offensive line. We were the worst offensive line in week 1. They were the second worst offensive line in week 1. We had an 18.3 overall pass grade from PFF for our offensive line. They had a 39.8, something like that. I'll talk about that. But we have to get at their offensive line. That's terrible. Their offensive line looked very bad. They weren't good on pass protection. They weren't good on run protection. I asked Webb, hey, what do you think the weaknesses are for the DC defenders because I'm trying to prep for my preview show. And I said, give me 4, 3 of which he gave me were offensive line. So I had to come up with 2 of my own, but it's very bad. Then Greg Williams. So I just talked about how good they are at blitzing, but that can also become a weakness because Greg Williams, that's what he's known for. He's a defensive coordinator who absolutely loves the blitz, and he's doing it because, I don't know, that's just what he likes. But it's also a weakness because he was bringing 7 guys. He was bringing 6, 7 guys on blitzes when they were running empty sets. So that's how Garbers was able to get the ball out. That's how they were able to pick apart the man and zone defenses, is that they were bringing too many guys and not dropping people into coverage, which then made their pretty good secondary look not that great. Then discipline. I put in parentheses, spitters or quitters. They were so undisciplined. I think the only other team who was as undisciplined as them was us. Like I said earlier, I'm wearing the shirt because we need to clean up our act. We had 22 penalties. They had a lot worse. I mean, they had 2 touchdowns get pulled back because of penalties. They had a guy get ejected for spitting on a Brahmas player, Gene DeLance. He was then cut, so he's not even on the team anymore. But they had a meltdown when it came to being disciplined and just not shooting yourself in the foot. So yeah, discipline is a big thing, both for them and us. But when we're looking at their weaknesses, that is one of them. And then the last thing is their run game. Everybody knows that Abram Smith was their bread and butter last year. He is out for the season. Abram Smith tore his ACL. He's gone. So they started Cameron Harris and Puka Williams last week. Puka Williams, very small guy. Cameron Harris, pretty normal running back, but he's not Abram Smith. And they were not able to get the run game going. And when you look at them, they're an RPO style offense. They really rely on the defense needing to take into account the run. And they did not have to take into account the run. The Brahmas absolutely shut it down. Wade Phillips and his defense, they stopped the run altogether. So that was definitely one of their weaknesses. Now they are actually starting Higgins, I believe. They're going to bring him in. So they're going to have bigger running backs this week against our defensive line. But their run game didn't look good. It didn't look good at all. Their offensive line didn't look like they could block for the run. So that is definitely a weakness, and I think it will still be a weakness this week. So we move on, and now we're going to talk about the keys to winning. These are my keys that we have to do. I talked about it last week. What was one of my keys? Cannot make mistakes on special teams. If we didn't make mistakes on special teams, we probably win that game. So there you go. But number 1, we have to attack the offensive line. That was their number 1 weakness. Like I said, Webb said 3 different weaknesses were all the offensive line. Now, they scored the second worst by PFF in pass protection. They scored a 39.8. We were the worst with an 18.3. Literally, you could double our score and we still don't reach them. That's how bad we were. But they were also awful. And if you look at us, our number 1 strength last week, I mean, Reuben Foster probably, but the defensive line. Our defensive line is great on runs. They're great on passes. They are just shuffling through, bringing in fresh feet, fresh players every other down. So our defensive line is legitimate, and we can absolutely take advantage of their offensive line. And if we can get to Jordan Ta'amu, if we can make him uncomfortable early, that's going to be a big difference. Number 2, we have to tighten up on third down. We did this a little bit in week 1. So it felt like our defensive line, our linebackers, even our secondary, we were stopping them and getting them to a third down a lot of the time. I mean, a lot of the time they were driving down and we'd get them to a 3rd and long and then they would convert. We would just let them convert. And it didn't make sense. It felt like soft coverage. CJ mentioned that in the media call this week. People were bringing up, hey, the Showboats were able to just drive down on you. What did you do to make a difference there? And he said, well, in the second half, it started getting better because we started running more man defense. I think that's going to be key this week. I think when it comes to third downs, we have to bring more creative blitzes, which I think Chris Wilson will. If I know anything about Chris Wilson after watching last season, it's that the defense only gets better. It really does. And that Brett Maxey, he's able to take average DBs and make them above average to good DBs by the end of the season. So we have good DBs already. I think they're only going to get better. So we have to tighten up. We have to play more man coverage. We cannot just let them pick apart our zone because they're saying, okay, we're going to run a hitch route to the sticks and we're going to hit it. and we're not covering it. We cannot do that. So we must tighten up on third down. Then moving on, clean special teams play. I could probably put this every week, but it's rings so true this week. When you look at last week, we had our first kickoff that we were returning down at the 7-yard line. We muffed a punt. We weren't starting with good field position. When you watch the Arlington Renegades versus Birmingham Stallions, the average starting position was their own 45, and ours was probably the 22. We were pinning ourselves deep nonstop. It was crazy. We cannot make these mistakes. We can't have blocked punts like we did in week 1. We can't have muffed punts. We can't be downing the ball deep in our own territory. We just help ourselves out with the plays that we should be making. Special teams, when you look at special teams, those are the plays that should be automatic. And wow, every time we kicked a ball, every time we were trying to return a ball, I was nervous. And that should not be the fact. We'll see what happens, but we have to clean up special teams play. We cannot have that happen. Then the last thing is, and probably the most important thing, is we have to have more aggressive offensive game plan. And the biggest thing for me is we have to run with number 6. Quarterback, Jarrett Garantano. The dude has great legs. I asked him in the post-game press conference, I said, Jarrett, you have great legs. You run well. Why did you only run twice this game? You had 22 yards on the ground in 2 rushes. One of them was a 20-yard rush. Let's look at it. Let's look at that rush. Here we go. Is he going to play? Yeah. I mean, he just runs out and takes off, dude. He's galloping like a gazelle. He's got long legs. He's getting down there. That was an easy 20 yards. They're going to give that to you a lot, especially if they're going to blitz. If you can move outside, throw a couple blitz beaters, and then just run through the holes that the blitzers are going to end up making, we can do that. We're going to take that all day. It's like watching baseball and saying, oh, yeah, this guy gets on base a lot, but he's just walking. Cool. We will take a walk all day long. I will take a 10-yard quarterback run nonstop. I will take that all game. So we really, really, really need to see Jarrett Garantano using his legs more, creating more plays. He said that they had more quarterback run plays designated, and they never used them because they were playing from behind the whole game. They were getting blitzed more than they expected. Well, this week, we're going to be getting blitzed almost every play. I would say at least 85% of the time, I think we're going to be taking blitzes from the Greg Williams DC defense. But we have to be more aggressive. I think we threw one pass further than 10 yards. I mean, you have to be able to have the testicular fortitude to throw the ball deep. We have the receivers. You could just swing it out to Justin Hall, Isaiah Henney, and then throw it deep to Kiki Chisholm, Anthony Ratliff-Williams, Emmanuel Butler. Hit these dudes downfield. They're going to be there. I feel good with 50-50 balls with them. And we have to do that. We cannot play this little, we're throwing conservative passes, 3 and outs. We just take the shot. I think you have to take the shot. I would love it if play 1 of the game, we say, you know what, we're going to play action and we're going to chuck it downfield. I'd love it. Also, we need to play action more, but we have to get the run started to do that. Kirk Merritt, he looked good coming out of the backfield. He just needs to keep his feet. He can't fall. So there's a lot of things that weren't good with the offense last week, but they could be better. If we can be more aggressive, if we can clean up special teams, if we could just attack their offensive line on defense, which we're going to do, I can tell you that our defensive line is going to eat this weekend. These are the keys to the game. If we can do these things, we will win this game. I promise you. When I was talking to Webb, he said, do you have Mark Thompson? I said, no. He said, if you had Mark this weekend, I would say you guys are going to win. But because you don't, I think you're going to lose. I think we could still win. I think it's our game to win. Honestly, if we lose, it's our fault. 22 penalties last week. We cannot do that. We should play like Navy. We need to be disciplined. 0 penalties across the board. Let them make the mistakes. Don't hurt ourselves. We got this. All right. Rough them up. Drill, baby, drill. Let's go beat DC in their home stadium, guys. I cannot wait.
I'm in the big leagues. Told them don't miss me. Ballin' like Houston. Hey, feeling like Whitney. I need a bag, bro.
Hey guys, thank you so much for watching the UFM United Football Media. If you like that, please make sure to like and subscribe. Also, if you want more videos, you can check them out on our channel over here. The best one for you is right here. And then if you like mine, the rest of my playlist is right here. Thank you guys, and I hope to see you next time.